Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today is Jack Kirby Monday, so we're looking at the granddaddy of them all from the King. This is New Gods, issue number 1, cover dated March 1971. A little backstory on this. I was lucky enough a few years ago to get the whole series 1 to 11 for a really decent price, just before prices kind of shot up. These are reader copies, right? Not pristine copies. There's a bit of wear on the spine here, and there's an unfortunate little stamp here. But at the same time, which I think brings about an interesting detail, cover dates were always to tell the vendor when to take the books off the stand, right? So March 1971 is when he would have taken it off. It seems like this kid, maybe for some reason, when he bought his comics, stamped them with the date at which they were purchased, right? The similar stamp that you would get in your library book to give you the due date when the book was due back to the library. And this date here indicates December 31st, 1970. So, you know, I'd like to think that this comic was purchased on that day, the last day of the year, 1970. And, you know, if Kirby was really pushing the 60s with the stuff he was doing at Marvel, we're well into the 70s, I think, with New Gods. This cover kind of right away, to me, doesn't scream 1960s, definitely screams 1970s. The bold colors, still slightly psychedelic kind of feel to it, right? And unfortunately, I've learned later on that there's a bit of messing with Jack Kirby's artwork for the cover here. So I've seen the original, which is pretty cool in of itself. But DC's production unit just decided to, in their eyes, spruce it up and do some different stuff and do this kind of collage background, characters stuck on top. The colors are not necessarily indicative. I mean, Orion's suit is red, but not all over. This is a silver helmet usually. So kind of weird, but at the same time, not having known any of that, I always thought this cover was intriguing, interesting, appealing, and I couldn't exactly say why. I think the bold use of red all throughout kind of works graphically, and back in 1970, I definitely think people would have seen this from afar and kind of wanted to pick it up and look at it because it looked quite different from other stuff on the stand. So I kind of get that aspect of it. All the hyperbole in the world, right, to announce that Jack Kirby's here. When the old gods died, there arose the new gods. An epic for our times, and Reed Orion fights for Earth. So, without further ado, let's have a look inside. If you don't know this, Jack Kirby considered all the characters he created all throughout his career, both at Marvel and DC, from jumping from one to the other, basically, again, throughout his whole career, to kind of be all connected into one mythology. So, the idea of the new gods basically follows the story of the old gods, which he's telling you here really quickly, the end of the old gods, basically Ragnarok, the Norse gods. It's not explicitly stated, but pretty much, very much in the Thor kind of style. The mythological creatures that you would find in Thor and stuff, and the costume designs definitely mirror stuff he was doing on Thor, I think. And from Ragnarok there and the destruction of the universe on this panel here, you get the birth of 2 planets and the new mythology and the new gods. And then we're introduced right away to Orion, who's going to be kind of our main character right in the new gods. We'll learn more about him right away in this first issue, things he doesn't even know about himself. Art-wise, there's nothing to be said here. This is Kirby kind of running on all cylinders, and it's going to be even better when Mike Royer jumps in and becomes the inker in a few issues. Unfortunately, until then, we got to kind of, we're stuck with Vince Colletta, who's doing an okay job, but I mean, thankfully, Kirby's work is so powerful in here and his designs and stuff that, you know, I can kind of forget about the Colletta inking for a bit, put it aside, and just look at the strengths of the compositions and the images and the boldness of it. The costume design, right, is definitely like a step up from the Marvel stuff. Again, he's moving into the 70s. The battle armor these guys wear, they're not superhero costumes, right? They're gods, so they're wearing, you know, battalion suits and stuff. So all of the designs you're going to see in this issue are pretty cool as they're introduced for the first time, right? So Kirby's never been so cosmic, I think, even just within these 2 panels here, and you'll see more of it throughout the series, obviously. But man, just, you know, he's pushing even further all the stuff he was doing in Fantastic Four, I think, specifically, right? A lot of the cosmic stuff came from both Thor and Fantastic Four, and I feel like he's kind of pulled in from both of those for New Gods here. So we're introduced to New Genesis, the floating city of the gods, right? The leader of the gods, I guess, where we'll meet Highfather and stuff. All of this stuff here, just look at that, all that great Kirby design. Of course, they would have huge statues of their gods or themselves, I guess, right? So it's like the, at least for 1970, the Thor aesthetic pushed into kind of, or put through the Fantastic Four filter of science fiction. He's really mixing both here with mythology and science fiction, right? I don't know if it's the first time it's been done, but it's the first time it's been done to this extreme, I guess. You know, he's, again, just running on all cylinders and really throwing out all those great, Kirby concepts that are still around today. Again, the Coletta inking just kind of brings it, back into the early 60s a little bit, not quite as loyal to the pencils as I wish he was. Still, again, on the art side, can't wait for Mike Royer to show up. But again, it doesn't ruin the story enough for me that it's Coletta inking. So we're introduced to Highfather, right? Seems to be Orion's father, it seems like, right? And then we're introduced to Metron, who's kind of the knowledge seeker, who's neither, on the side of New Genesis or Apocalypse. He's kind of in between. So everyone kind of questions his motives, especially Orion, right? And then we get an interesting sequence here, which I'm going to read out. So we're introduced to the Source as well, which is kind of like the way in which they literally, I guess, communicate with God. And he'll write on the wall, the big hand here. It'll come into play in later issues as well. We'll see it. But it's kind of telling you what's going to happen, right? It's interesting how Highfather defines it. The Source gives us the irrevocable counsel. Okay, so he's kind of saying, well, the Source tells us what's irrevocably going to happen, but it does not decide. The right of choice is ours. That is the life equation. The anti-life equation was undiscovered until these days. It means the outside control of all living thought. That's what Metron brings in here. So right away, they're giving you kind of the conflict that's going to be happening between the new God characters, Highfather and Darkseid, who we're going to meet not in this issue, but who we've met before. You'll see a representation of them. But that's basically, the conflict that's being set there. And so Orion knows that he has to go to Apocalypse first, then to Earth, and then to War, right? So that kind of is the storyline we're going to be following all throughout the New Gods issues, even though it will be unfinished, right? And so Metron throws in, as he's talking to Highfather, how wondrously wise is the Source? Who is more ready to fight the Father than the Son? Metron, hold your tongue. You toy with my wrath. Did you think I didn't know? Orion the mighty, Orion the fierce. Could this be one born of New Genesis? Right? So what he's saying is Orion's kind of fierce and angry and stuff. So, he can't be born here in New Genesis. He's born on Apocalypse, right? No, Apocalypse. But it is not yet time for him to know. You shall keep the secret. So he's telling them to shut up. So Highfather is keeping a secret from Orion. The fact that he's actually from that Apocalypse is his father, right? And a lot of people have pointed to that as kind of a ripoff that George Lucas used in Star Wars. I don't know for sure. I don't think it's the first kind of father betrayal, son has to kill the father kind of storyline ever. It's all over mythology, but who knows? Maybe. So boom, now we're introduced to the planet Apocalypse, right? And right away you can see it's very kind of crude and dirty and on fire, basically. I love this design for the planet. There's actually like just huge volcanic pits, and it feels like a dirty technology. It doesn't feel organic, right? And whereas New Genesis does, at least not the floating city of gods, but at least the planet itself. And then when you get down to its surface, you can see like all the pollution and the disgusting kind of industry that's going on there, polluting and grime and the such. We're introduced to the parademons here very quickly. Unfortunately, Coletta's inking doesn't help them at all. In later issues, we'll be getting closer up to them. We get a close-up shot here to see if they're a little more kind of ugly and demonic-looking Kirby henchmen, right? I do like that in the case of the parademons. Usually he'd have henchmen who all have the exact same costume. There's variation between all of them, which I think is interesting. I love these panels where they just kind of throw one monochrome color on a foreground character. I think it works really well here. And then they do it here, but only on his arm and not on his helmet and stuff, which is colored normally as it usually would. So it just kind of loses its appeal in this panel. Very odd that they just didn't blue out the rest of them as well, which would have worked better like in this panel. Some odd color choices all throughout the New God series. Some color mistakes as well. I'll point those out when I see them. And so here we go. As I said, we won't meet Darkseid directly, but we'll see a statue representation of him, which is pretty cool. And I think this is probably the first time Kirby's kind of really finalized his design. As we saw him in the earlier issues in Jimmy Olsen and the Forever People that I've reviewed. He has a cape in one. He's got long pants and higher boots and stuff. So I think this is pretty darn close to the final design that he's going to give him. Although I will say he's still kind of wearing underwear, where eventually he'll just kind of have the mini skirt, which I think in a weird way, you wouldn't think a mini skirt would work on such a dastardly evil villain, but for some reason, I really like that design element much more so than the kind of underwear look that he has early on. The face he's figured out a long time ago. Love this whole sequence here. Anytime I see an upshot like this that Kirby draws, I always feel like he's still kind of pulling from some Prince Valiant stuff he ripped off back in his early career or something. Like he's kind of got that face ingrained. There's a Prince Valiant kind of quality to this. I can't quite put my finger on, but I feel is there. Love panels like this too, that Kirby does, where there's like weird kind of, like everything's flat, right? Like it's very profile, but just weird shapes and technology and stuff, because it's, again, mythical science fiction, so you can pretty much do anything, which is very fun. Love it. And of course, in the foreground near us, and then in the background, you've got the kind of evil scientist with bad intentions kind of character, and just a panel I think always works really well, create that sense of depth. We're introduced to the what are they called? The demon dogs, or Orion does the he just calls them dogs here. Dogs of War, possibly. He does give them a name at some point. Whatever. The Hellhounds, I believe. Yeah, just like, man, you do not want to be meeting dogs that look like this, do you? Yeah, there's something about the Kirby teeth inside the dog that's very unsettling. And they don't quite always look like dogs because it's Kirby, right? So like sometimes they look more monkey-ish, or just like some sort of weird hybrid creature. Almost more like a panther from this angle, like something a little more feline about it. I don't know. I just feel like in this issue, he's just setting up so many concepts that he's had in his head for so long, and he's just throwing them out one after another, and they're all really cool. Then he does a panel like this. I'd like when, like, in profile, the whole design, it's almost like he's doing like a hieroglyphic kind of image, I would say. There's a something to the composition there. It's almost like a story within a story here. Maybe it's just me. This whole thing here, how some weird kind of portals opening up between, like, this whole section here is very kind of psychedelic and surreal to me. That's kind of what I think appeals to me most at this time. Whether Kirby's aware of it or not, there's a huge kind of surrealist movement happening in the 60s and the 70s. Dali has already been around for years, and there's something about the New God stuff that just pulls that out of Jack Kirby. It's almost like, if you know anything about Jodorowsky's Dune, there's like a kinship there between two guys just throwing out tons of crazy. Again, I would argue that Jodorowsky's version of Dune is similar to the New Gods in that it's like mythology wrapped up in sci-fi, right? So there's definitely a kinship there, and I think there's a reason why I like both New Gods and, again, Jodorowsky's Dune, even though an unrealized project, just tons of material out there that you can look at that's very inspiring. And this is one of those elements. I feel like if they could have met and worked together, they might have kind of done something crazy and awesome and insane. Wouldn't that be something? Written by Jodorowsky and drawn by Jack Kirby. We're introduced to Kalibak, who's Orion's brother, right? And a minion of Darkseid. And, looking through this issue, the first kind of drawings of Kalibak, I'm wondering if, I know for sure Andre the Giant was a wrestler by 1970, and had probably already come to America. So sometimes I wonder if that's kind of, the design is based on Andre the Giant, right? No matter how kind of fantastical Kirby's characters can look and feel, he's often said that most of the ideas come from people that he actually knows or he's met or who do actually exist. Here's an interesting sequence too, where Metron's kind of informing Orion of things he kind of needs to know about this whole, first to apocalypse, then to Earth, then to war kind of concept, right? And basically what he's showing him is that on Earth, Darkseid has already kind of set up a network there and is building underground tunnels and is searching for the person who has the anti-life equation that, here we go. We see a shot of all that here. So Metron says, if he contacts that mind that has the secret of the anti-life equation, Darkseid is, when he does, he will not survive to use that knowledge. I shall stop him. So that's what Orion says. But okay, basically, if Darkseid has the anti-life equation, he has the power to control everyone's minds all throughout the universe, right? And again, that's a pretty lofty goal for a villain, and that's why Darkseid is basically the big bad of the DC universe. First introduced by Jack Kirby, in the New Gods saga, not in this issue, but earlier on. But we're kind of introduced to him in little snippets and stories other people are telling about him. We still haven't met him directly, right? Just a little bit in Forever People, not enough. But that's kind of cool. I like the way he does that, where there's just little spritzes of Darkseid, all through the first issues of the Jimmy Olsen, forever people. There's going to be some in Mr. Miracle, and then eventually we're going to meet him really and in full. I'm pretty sure in New Gods, and we'll have a good sequence with Darkseid. So beyond that door, Darkseid has broken the rule to bring humans through the tube. So he's brought them back to, I guess, try to control their minds, do tests on them, figure out how to do that, right? So here's the kind of human element that I guess Kirby still figured he'd have to introduce into the storyline. So these human characters that Orion saves here from mind control and eventually protects them from Kalibak's attack. Once again, can you see the Andre the Giant reference at least a little bit, right? And the hair and stuff. So yeah, protects them from Kalibak and then pushes back just in time for them to be able to jump into the boom tube, all the humans, right? Escaping Kalibak. And like even here, there's something akin to Andre the Giant to me in the design here of the face. Not the teeth and stuff, but like kind of looks like him. Maybe I'm off. But yeah, so they escape back to Earth. And these human characters, right? Again, the storytelling principle that you should have some human characters so people have someone to kind of empathize with in the story, right? And I guess that's Kirby is kind of second-handedly doing here, begrudgingly at the end of the issue. Those characters will stick around for a few of the early New Gods issues and then kind of, almost disappear completely. These first few bunch of human characters who you would think would be introduced kind of be as regular players, but yeah, the focus will shift much more towards the gods and not so much the humans. And now Orion realizes that he's on Earth and that Darkseid is here as well. Darkseid, I have come, the battle begins. That's a bit unfortunate. I have come. No one says that anymore. At least not in that context. Oh, so prologue. I kind of find it weird that epilogue is at the beginning, prologue is at the beginning, but I guess the epilogue of Ragnarok and the old gods dying is the New God story, and then prologue to what we're going to see next. Right? I guess that makes sense. As it was in the time of the old gods, the titanic struggle for the fate of mankind is to rage once again. The new gods wield greater power, for in our day, it's we who live in the dark shadow of the outcome. And another great shot of Darkseid here. This whole image is just very evocative and just strange rituals going on. And again, just very surreal and stuff like this. Just, again, there's such a connection I find between two great artists and their concepts that fascinate me. Jack Kirby with the New Gods and Jodorowsky and his concepts for Dune. There's just so much crossover there. And both of those guys kind of really influence me in my work and stuff that I want to work on in the future, right? My Big Baby comics are a little more down to earth, not with Big Baby so much, but as far as the concepts and the storylines and the plot lines. But I definitely have some ideas on the back burner and sketchbooks and stuff for that kind of, again, the mix of, mythology and science fiction, I think is just awesome when done well by masters like Jack Kirby and Jodorowsky. So there you go. Tons of interesting concepts already introduced in issue 1 of New Gods, but there's lots more to come, and Kirby's just getting started. So I think it's a okay introductory issue, not necessarily the best New Gods issue, but to get us started off, I think it's great, and I'm definitely looking forward to looking at the next few issues of the New Gods saga and the greater Fourth World saga. So everyone out there who is still subscribed to the channel and is still watching, thank you so much for your support. I really do appreciate it. If you are not subscribed, please do so below. We're on the road to 500 subs. That's where YouTube officially recognizes us as an official channel and starts helping us out a little bit with the algorithm and on the right side of your screen and the suggestions. So if you know anyone out there who's into comic books just like we are, please let them know and tell them to check out the channel, the reviews, and subscribe if they like what they see. So thank you again for watching, guys, and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KingComics.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!